the book of Luke. Where we will find ourselves at the 22nd chapter, beginning at the 47th verse. At a well-known portion of Scripture. And I'll read. And while he yet spake, behold, a multitude, and he that was called Judas, one of the 12, went before him, and drew near unto Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus said unto him, Judas, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss? When they which were about him saw what would follow, they said unto him, Lord, shall we smite with the sword? And one of them smote the servant of the high priest, and cut off his right ear. And Jesus answered and said, Suffer ye thus far. And he touched his ear, and healed him. Then Jesus said unto the chief priests, and captains of the temple, and the elders which will come to him, Be ye come out as against a thief, with swords and staves? When I was daily with you in the temple, you stretched forth no hand against me, but this is your hour and the power of darkness. I'd like to come to you today from the topic, I cannot hear you. I once heard a story about a wife. She was going to talk to one of her close friends. She was really having some struggles at home. You know, she just wasn't happy with her husband. You know, he wasn't doing right, didn't do any good. And so she got to the point where she was even talking divorce. So she said to her friend, she said, but he hurt me so bad that before I divorce him, I want to really make sure that he hurts. You know, yeah, it was bad. So her friend decided, said, okay, well, you know, I got an idea. If you want to really make sure he hurts, you need to make him extremely happy before you drop the bomb on him. You need to make sure he feels loved and appreciated. You need to take every opportunity to tell him you love him and how you appreciate the little stuff that he does. And then just when he's happy as Moses, drop the bomb on him and tell him you want to divorce. You know, so she said, hey, this is a good idea. Yeah, I'm going to do exactly that to him, right? So she goes home, and, you know, and weeks later, you know, because she starts doing this. She starts telling her husband she loves him. Never miss an opportunity to show appreciation and gratitude. And then eventually, her friend calls her up and says, hey, you know, it's been a while. Are you still ready to get that divorce done? And she said, divorce? What are you talking about? I love my husband. You know, and I'm not going to divorce him. See, what happened is once she started showing these behaviors, suddenly she started realizing that she did love him.
Okay.
Something about these kind of behaviors that we show, something about love that tends to reach past, you know, our deafness, our blindness, you know, the things that we think of the truth. But once we start acting and showing love, we start to realize the real truth of the game. I was once in my study looking at love for what it is. Those who know me best know that, you know, I'm probably not the biggest, most emotional person, you know, about expressing love to people. And confessing due to some mental issues I deal with, but more importantly, to exhibit love as an emotion seems to get past me sometimes. However, to be able to show love as a state of identity, love is who we are. Or more decisively, being indwelt by the Holy Spirit, allowing one to see love as an action rather than a passionate or passive emotion, is what we as Christians should be striving for. The love of God is more than a feeling.
Yeah.
Actions say, I love you as you are God's own. And not because I have a moment of emotion for you, but because you and I are connected. You and I belong to God, and He is our Heavenly Father. For instance, when we look at the highest love, that sacrificial love, shown to us by that death on the cross, you know, denoted by the Greek word agape, it seems to have been virtually a Christian invention. Only coming into true existence with Christ, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself in the form of sinful man and became obedient, dying on the cross. That you and I may be invited back to the family reunion with Father God. Agape, sacrificial love. Effectively, a new word for a new thing. Apart from about 20 occurrences in the Greek version of the Old Testament, it is almost non-existent before the New Testament. Agape, sacrificial love, true love, unconditional love, draws its meaning directly from the revelation of God in Christ.
Yeah.
It's not a form of natural affection, however intense, but it's a supernatural fruit of the Spirit. This is going to tie into there for you. We find that in Galatians 5:22. It's a matter of will and action rather than feeling. For Christians must love even those they dislike, as we find is given us as instructions in Matthew 5th chapter. It is the basic element in being Christ-like.
Yeah.
Is to be able to convey love. Where does this tie in to where we are in Scripture? When we approach any situation, regardless of how we feel, regardless of how bad the day is, regardless of what we're going through, regardless of how scared we are to act in love. We are to exhibit that love to friends, to enemies, to people we don't like. I can't stand you 1 minute, but I love you. You know, it's for us to show that to people because it is how we are heard.
Yeah.
A lot of times our message, a lot of times the Christian message is drowned out, you know, by hatred, it's drowned out by, you know, big us and little them. You know, it's drowned out by us not seeing people as God's people, you know, even when we're in the worst circumstances. I'm guilty as any. I mean, my wife will tell you, you know, I will, you know, I'll get up in the worst possible mood. I'm mad because I got up. I'm just saying. You know, she'll be ready to kiss me and tell me bye for the day, and I'll find something wrong. I'm like, man, I don't want to kiss you. Your lips like they got this chicken in You know, there's any reason to fight for it. Even me, right? So, you know, but we have to consider each of our actions, even those small things, as, you know, am I showing love? Because that's how the message of the gospel is heard. It's how we show love. So when we approach any situation, regardless of how we feel, we must ask ourselves before acting, is this action done with love? When we take actions of our own accord, not waiting on God, we often do damage to the ministry and effectively hinder the word of love from reaching the ears of our intended audience. Effectively, this ties into this encounter we're finding in Scripture, and it's recorded in all four Gospels, noting that some additional information might be seen here in my favorite Gospel, the Gospel of Luke. To understand what I'm saying, we have to understand the context of the two who stood in the situation, Christ and the disciple he loved and would instruct closely, Peter. We don't have the disciple identified here in Luke, but John fills in the gaps that this was definitely Peter. Yeah, he wasn't going to get away with this. Identified him by name. Anyway, Christ had just completed praying so vigorously in the garden that it said his sweat ran down as tears of blood, as Dr. Luke would note in the 44th verse. How ironic that Dr. Luke would notate an actual medical condition called hematidrosis. The most studies suggest that stress and involuntary nervous system reactions, in other words, medical knowledge at this time didn't even know it existed, but Luke mentioned it anyway. That's a sermon for another time.
Amen.
You know, but he mentioned this because it shows the grief, the suffering, the hardship, just how bad of a day Christ was having.
Yeah.
Because he knew what awaited him in this encounter. He knew what happened next. He knew that everything that follows was not going to end well for him. And then he would get up and save us all, including those who hated him. He knew that this was the worst possible situation he could find himself in because all he had awaiting him was suffering. Right. He knew that following that moment would be what has been known as the passion, but nothing good about it. He would endure torture. He would endure judgment. He would be abused and spat on, crucified, and left to die. Ridiculed even until his dying breath to show love. And now he stood before his captors. He had just experienced a deliberate betrayal of Judas. That means his friend turned his back on him for some money. Another one would fall on him and sold out his faith. Imagine how that feels. All this stress. Your friend sold you out for money. Now you're faced with the ones who would begin this process of suffering and end it in excruciating death. Would you give it that he was having a bad day? It's having a pretty bad day. Then you have Peter, having previously just got a nap in, well rested as Christ kneeled in the garden praying in agony. Peter was laying there with the rest of them. So he just got a nap. He was well rested. He just woke up.
Yeah.
you know, and he's here at this same encounter. While Jesus had experienced that loneliness, Peter was with the rest of the disciples getting his rest on. So he was in virtually a good mood, or as close to it as he could possibly be with what was getting ready to go down. Now, because even reading the words and knowing, the loneliness that Christ was feeling at this moment, we can't fathom the pain of knowing what Christ knew and going through with it anyway. Peter only knew what he was told. He had followed Christ and learned from him as only one who loved Christ could, and that was right at his side. Now he stood for those who would take his master, Lord, and friend from him. And he stood with nothing but one of two swords that were meant to ward off bandits or wild animals in the night. But what occurs in this next moment was very much unlike a disciple of Christ, who'd been right there next to him the whole time. Seeing the way Christ carried himself. Though Peter might have had the greatest intentions like we sometimes have, he stepped out of line and he did the wrong thing. You see, because what occurred next is the most important thing for us to get when we're trying to react to moments where faith is needed the most. Specifically in dealing with people when things just aren't going well. When all seems lost. When things are bleak. And when we're in the worst possible mood, it's making a wise decision, that Christ-like decision that needs to be made. And doing what he would have us do, even when we think we know that. The scripture says in the 49th verse that the disciples asked Christ if they wanted them to fight for him with the sword. Remember they asked him? Because look, they came tonight to Christ. Christ is surrounded, right? And so, of course, his people are like, do you want us to fight for him? They're asking, they're ready. They're ready to fight for him. But after asking that specifically, Peter just went ahead and took a swing in the 50th verse. Didn't even wait for an answer. He went into the swing. He was that one hot head in the crew when you think about it. Who seemed to just be waiting to throw hands with somebody. We all know one of those. They make some of the worst people to roll with. They were worst rolling buddies ever. Because when you know you're heading into trouble, you don't want them with you. Because they like to make it get worse. They be the one to throw the first punch, likely on somebody bigger than them, because you standing there, and they know that you're there, and just hoping that you're gonna jump in with them. And if they're family, you pretty much know you gotta jump in. But now they done got you in trouble. This was Peter, so Peter just took a swing. Now, I know I'm not the only one, because back in the day, I know that if you were with your family member, one of them had to, thrown a punch, and you knew the whole crew was ready to descend on your friend, what'd you do? You had to get involved, right? Didn't want to get involved, but you had to get involved. You just hoped that they didn't throw a punch at the crew you knew you couldn't beat. So that was Peter. So it started right. They asked Jesus, what would be the right thing to do? Should we fight for you? We often ask Christ before we engage in any battle. But too often, we jump in swinging before we even hear an answer and mess stuff up. So Peter cut off the man's ear. He was identified in John as Malchus, the servant of the high priest, the one whose ear was cut off. This was a big mistake. Now, I'm not worried about anybody here jumping into physical violence, because I would guess that most of us have gotten a bit beyond those hothead years in age, maturity, and wisdom. But often we have a tendency to beat people over the head with faith, religion, and Christianity in general. We go beating people over the head. Everything about the Christian faith is offering a choice. Not beating people over the head. Do you give a loving touch of Christ, or do you swing the sword of the word, to do damage. And too often we jump to do damage, and then we start wondering why they don't hear us.
Uh-huh.
It's quite deep, because if rejected, we've done our due diligence to plant or water the seed that may sprout in due time if we just deliver the Christian message in love. But
Yes.
we use the word as a means of attack, and it does harm to our work. Or we show action and put our religion down for a moment, and reflects badly on ourselves and Christ, in which we call ourselves serving and defending. When we do this, we handicap one of our greatest opportunities to win someone over. Because when Peter cut off the ear of the man, just as we do with beating people over the head, we don't physically cut as much as we mentally and emotionally cut off the ears of people to the gospel.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear from you. We have some really volatile Christians out here. I'm the last person to compromise the word for anyone, but learning how to wield the word with wisdom is the key to winning souls for Christ. We may pray and ask the Lord to be with us as we go out to witness to people, as we go into our everyday lives, but when we are so overzealous that our ministry begins to attack the person rather than the sin, we do Christ, the truth of the gospel, and the kingdoms of heaven no favor by cutting off the ears of the people, acting holier than thou, beating them over the head with scriptures, and forgetting that all we do must carry love with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own pet sins and vices, including us, that we have to battle. That homosexual, drunken, prostitute, hustler, you get my point, is also a person loved by God, valuable and wanted by the Father in heaven,
Yeah.
though the world rejects them. Had Peter waited for an answer, he would have avoided a great embarrassment. Because as we find in other accounts of this one, Christ tore into him for this, because he'd already known better. He was already told what would occur.
That's right.
But yet and still, because he thought he was doing the right thing,
That's right.
instead of waiting for God's answer, he jumped in and lashed out, and he cut off the ears of a man who could have probably got a message right there.
Amen.
So instead of just getting that through message, he had to be healed.
That's right.
We find that far too often, that instead of waiting on the Lord on how we should get into a situation, we just jump into it. It's great to be known as a spiritual one at work. The person people can come to pray.
Yes.
Or in the community, the people come to for that spiritual wisdom and for wise counsel because of the way you carry yourself. It's great to be that way, because you demonstrate the love of Christ and how you carry yourself in word and deed, and not just professing with your mouth and your being there in church.
Amen.
While you're an offense at work. Believe it or not, I know some Christians that I would want nothing to do with. Even as being a Christian, aside from trying to win them back to some common sense and sharing the love of God. I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
So if Christians are embarrassed to be around you, then you should probably examine your behaviors carefully.
Okay.
Because you may not be the most appealing person to
Well.
the lost either.
Well,
Moving on. We now have Christ, embarrassed by the behavior of one of his own, who already knew what had to occur, already knew he was powerless to change God's plan, stepped out of line and tried to help Christ, and accomplished nothing in the process, but embarrassed himself. Imagine how some of us feel about our kids, spouses, friends, etc. when they get hyped and come to our defense unnecessarily and just come off as ridiculous. I swear, I'm surprised that I don't have a face bomb tattoo on my face sometimes, just from watching people. It's like, Lord help.
Amen.
They got the, God bless them, they got the best of intentions.
Yeah.
But because they want to jump stupid instead of thinking about how do I approach this
Yeah.
with love,
yeah,
they wind up cutting off the ear of the person
Yeah.
that they're trying to reach.
yeah, man.
But we create the worst possible situation and mess up our efforts when we don't consider how we address these things.
Yeah,
However, remember how we just recounted the kind of situation Christ was experiencing in the moment. He wasn't in the best mood either.
Right.
Yet and still, he reaches out and heals the ear of this person
Amen.
and puts the disciple he loved in his place.
Yeah.
Look at the symbolism. Where we mess up in our efforts to do what we think is right, Christ can heal the situation.
Amen.
No place have I seen this more than in churches, unfortunately, with what's called church hurt.
Yeah.
How many people do you think are out of fellowship because they had an experience in the church or with church folk? They sat in the wrong seat, felt judged and embarrassed for not having the proper dress, felt like an outsider in a country club of Christians,
Come on now.
walked out of someone's church with ears bleeding, cut off by the sword of Christ's followers, failed to meet them with love, but then Christ can heal.
Yeah.
Amen.
Just as he healed the ear of the one who Peter offended with the sword, only the love of Christ can heal the bleeding ears of the church hurt,
Yeah.
open them again to love. And then I asked an interesting question to those who came to get it. This is where I moved to my close. And he revealed to them in the situation something very interesting, the 52nd and 53rd verses. He said, "Be ye come out as against a thief with swords and staves. When I was daily with you in the temple, ye stretched forth no hands against me. But this is your hour, the power of darkness." His question implied a few things. The love of Christ had been exhibited to them consistently. They'd always seen the way he carried himself. You know, he didn't have to beat people over the head and things of that nature. He carried himself as Christ, as who he was at all time. So he could easily say to them, "But you're coming to me like I'm a thief, like some criminal."
Yeah.
When we know that's not the case.
Yeah.
He could say that because he would. Nobody ever called Christ acting a fool.
Right. Amen.
Amen.
So he came to them with that. And then secondly, it took away any excuse they had for the current actions at the moment. Didn't give them any rationale for being what they were, or what they were getting ready to do. However, he then pointed out something that is an understanding we have to have when we look at people. Even when we look at people acting a fool, or people that don't understand, or people that are even attacked in the Christian faith, when he said, "This is your hour and the power of darkness." The word for hour translated from the Greek, said, "This is your hour," is basically saying, "This is your time." You know, the word for power comes up basically meaning it delegates you. So in other words, you know, I could do all kind of things right now to resolve this, but it's not the time. I'm gonna let you go ahead and do what you're going to do because this is your hour and your time. But that implies that your short time's only gonna last for a little bit.
Amen. All right.
This is your time to act a fool.
That's right.
This is your time to show out what you can
Uh-huh.
do.
That's right.
You know, this is the time when that evil think is won.
Yeah.
But this is just your time right now.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Come on now.
Yeah, all right.
Because what's coming is going to be a change.
Yeah.
Amen.
What's coming is going to be showing the world what true love is. Because the more they beat him, the more they mistreated him,
Uh-huh.
you know, the more they spat on him, the more they
Uh-huh.
acted all sorts of ways towards him,
Yeah.
the more his love
Yeah.
shined.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why he can say, "If I be lifted up from the earth, I'll draw all men unto
Yeah.
me." Because the more he endured with love and still continued to show that love, the more the people started to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
The more bleeding ears started to be healed. So
Yeah.
that they could actually hear the love of God and what they witnessed.
Yeah.
By the way he approached these things, by the way he dealt with people. And we have to understand that too, that Christ was willing to wait for his ultimate victory until his warfare was accomplished.
Yeah.
And we have to be the same way too.
Yeah.
We got to be patient with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the hour and the power of darkness will always be short. And such is the triumph and the victory that Christ has for us. And sometimes it's for us to show love and wait for the battle to end. Because in the end, it is the Lord who's going to win over.
Yeah.
It's the loving hands of God that are going to be heard.
Yeah.
The tough days we endure are just passing days on the road to our ultimate destination. Difficult people will be difficult people. In the end, it will be the spirit that converts.
Yeah.
Difficult times are going to be difficult times, but in the end, how we endure is what people are going to see, and it's how they're going to get the love of God through their ears.
Yeah.
We have to ensure that our words and actions are always tempered with love, so that we don't make the mistake of cutting off the ears of the world to the gospel.
Amen. Amen. Amen.